So can you guys go ahead and pull up Edugents? And Edugents, when you get in there, we're gonna go to the district assessments.
And it does look different on my end than it
Yeah.
might be on their end.
You just want us to pull up the data analysis for that?
Yeah, I want you to go to the item analysis for it.
Item analysis?
So like for me to go to that, I have to go to here.
Yeah, the bottom, where it
Reports,
says
and
item analysis, there's error analysis, and there's
so
item analysis.
on the
Oh,
district
yeah.
side, you have like the teacher reports.
Thank you.
Okay, and I like, that's the one that you said you didn't have, and then just filter.
Okay, yeah.
Theirs looks a little bit different on the teacher end.
But go ahead and go open up the 4th grade math unit 6 fractions.
And then right there, you can go to item.
Okay, so when you pull it up and you're looking at it, on your end, you should be able to see what you did as a teacher versus the campus versus the district. And I actually printed off the teaks for you guys so you don't have to scroll down and look for them because they are at the bottom. These are the actual, well, on your end, it shows the teaks at the bottom. So I went ahead and printed them off for you guys so you don't have to look at them. There you go.
Thank you.
But what I want to do is just for a few minutes, I want you to look at this list, look at yourself as a teacher and see which teaks that your students missed most frequently. And what I like to do is on mine or on your screens, you can click by the percentage right here, and you can actually ask it to order like ascending or descending. I like to do it by ascending so I can see like at the top which ones they missed the most. So we do it right here. I'm gonna give you guys like a few minutes just to kind of look and see which students, the teaks you missed, and I'm gonna actually look on my personal home screen which ones mine missed too. Yeah, I didn't want to put the kids' names up on there.
Yeah.
Let's see. So here. Really just kind of notice the different trends that are happening. Notice what your students need help on or which teaks are their lowest versus which teaks are their highest. And then in a few more minutes, we're gonna talk about those different teaks.
Tricky question, the tricky word one.
So when you're reading it on this one, it doesn't show you, but on yours, on here, it'll show you the item number. So this is the actual question number from the test. And then here it shows the teak that they missed. And then over here, when it's in red, that shows you that those are the most missed, and the green shows you the ones that they got most correct. And at the bottom, it has what those teaks are, but I printed those, so you would have to go down and scroll for that.
one of the things that I also find helpful is, yes, it's a good idea to pull the TEAC, but also pull the question to see like how that TEAC was tested. And then versus, like in your mind, how I taught it, how it was presented to the student in various ways. And that way you can narrow it down to, was it an application error? Was it a question, like they didn't understand the question? You know, a breakdown in their math as they were working on, kind of helps you see on their end, what did they see?
And we're gonna look at the test questions after.
I agree with that
Yeah.
because my most missed question was 11, and it's because the kids shaded in the opposite of what it was asking. But if I look at my data here, I'm outperforming the district on that TEAC. It was just that one question.
Yeah, like my also most missed question for my classroom was 11.
Number 11.
Me too.
And then, but on the district, I'm noticing with the district, that is also one of the most missed questions was
Yeah.
the 11.
Yeah.
Yeah, we only have one campus for above 80 percentile.
Let me guess.
Not mentioning names, but I don't know. So that means that there's something with that question.
Right, so we need to go back, we need to look at that question 11 and see what it was that they were missing. But what other TEACs did you guys have that were higher before? I wrote down question 11, so what other ones do we want to go back and look
I
at?
also looked at the error analysis with this. So my most missed question was question 11.
Okay.
And then my second most missed question was question 7.
Mine is actually the same, what about you?
Mine was, the first miss was number 11, the second miss was number 12, and then the third miss was number 7.
Okay,
Are they all the same standards or no?
No, they're different.
different standards.
Okay.
So we have 4.3B, then for 7, we have 4.2G. And then yours was 12 one of your top ones, Miss? Because that was also one of mine.
No, 12 isn't, 12 was a mediocre one for me. My next one was 13.
I also had 13 in my top 5.
I did too.
Okay, so that is 4.3D.
And then 12 was 4.3F.
Okay. So we have 13, 12, 7, and 11. Okay. I wanna actually look at those, like what the actual questions were, so we can see if it was an application error, if it was, a concept that maybe they're just not understanding. So let's go and actually look at the test.
If you go back, here to Edgerton's, and then, go back here, and instead of going to reports, go to assessments.
Perfect.
I know, it looks different on,
It does look different on your
On
end.
my
It
end,
does.
yeah.
Okay,
Sorry
so
about that.
we'll go to 4th grade, we'll go to,
You have lots of options. I have it up if you wanna look up.
math.
So we're starting with 7 or 11?
Let's start with 11, because that was the one that everyone missed, or I think that was everyone's top one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's look.
Oh, that one. I knew that one was gonna get them.
Okay, so let's look at 11 first. 11. Okay, Jane made 10 orange cookie bars. She and her brother ate 2 bars each. Create a fraction model that shows what parts are left. I think this is the part that got them. The shaded part represents the cookie bars that are left.
So they did the opposite.
So they
did the
know the
opposite.
opposite.
Yep.
Because if they were putting it in 10 cookie bars, so they ate 2 bars each, they probably want 1, 2, 1, 2,
Instead of the 6.
instead of showing, that's confusing, but,
I did a question like it right before the test, and I was like, make sure you pay attention to what the question is asking, and then they still missed it.
so let's talk through that point.
Yeah,
right.
Okay, so knowing that, what testing strategy can you present to the student or be encouraging the student to do? So that last sentence, the shaded part represents the cookie bars that are left, doesn't mess them up.
So, cause that's like a reading strategy.
Well, I have them do this, and it's for like the ones that are like, which is not true, which is false, or which is correct. I have them write out if it's true or not true, so we could do, for something like this, it could be left, like iterate that that's important.
So really you need to focus on the vocabulary part of that, cause that's a vocabulary thing. I'm gonna write that down.
And then
That's-
rewriting what the question is asking, cause that's something that I have mine do often, is they'll come up with the main idea of the question, rewrite what the question is asking them, and then break down their information.
Okay. Okay, let's look at another question. Let's look at question 7.
It was obvious that they could do the fraction part.
Yeah.
You're right.
It
'cause
was
they-
just, they did the incorrect part.
So we really need to focus on that vocabulary part of those questions and really take the
Because-
time to not just look at the picture and say, oh, I know it's a fraction, it says 4, like
Yes.
shaded 4. It's
And
super-
also, that was a different type of, like, Star 2.0 kind of question, but it didn't seem that that was a problem. They were able to select it, so it was really a reading.
It was a reading problem.
They just assumed they knew what the question was gonna ask, and then they went boop, 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 boop.
Well, they see the word shaded fractions.
And they were like,
they're-
oh, shaded
easy.
fractions.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that's more of a vocabulary reading problem. Let's look at 7. Says select 2 equations that show a decimal and a fraction that are equivalent. So this is equivalent, decimal to fraction.
And multiple.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So maybe, I wish we could see what they select, we can see what they selected, right, for these choices?
Yes, if you go
Yes.
to the error analysis, it'll tell you what, they answered.
Can y'all pull up the error analysis so we can see which ones they were selecting?
Let's see.
So I think that might help us figure out how to help them.
For 7, a lot of the,
I think for number
oh
7,
no, cause it's a multi one.
Okay.
So
Half points or no points.
yeah, and I can you see it or not? Cause I can show you where to go.
But you know what?
If you go to where you assigned the test, does it tell you what option they chose? I don't wanna close this off.
Yeah, on here it just shows
I will
for number
minimize it.
7, 0 points.
I have a
So
question on
if you go
this, though.
back to, let me get to where you get, if you go back to where you assigned the test, okay? And instead of going, like I was telling, the humanities lady, instead of going to the people, go to the pencil, okay? If you go there, you can filter to your class and click on question 7, and it will show you what they selected.
Okay, my question is, are they getting partial credit for this question, or is it no credit? Cause from what I see, there's
Mine
no
is showing
partial
0.
credit,
It's showing 0.
but there is 1 credit. And I know that on STAR, they're offering partial credit.
Is this one, we have to go to the TEA
Well,
website?
Yeah, for this one, it's looking like it does
To
give
know.
1 points for some, but
Or
it's,
no
or
points.
no points. So either they got it or they didn't. So it looks like they're not giving partial credit for this specific question. But we can look and see, let's use that. Let's look and see maybe what our students
I'm gonna
did.
leave it like that so you can pull it up here so I don't display
Yeah,
the
thank
student's
you.
name. But, that's the way that you can see like those STAR 2.0 questions. But Sarah, I'm gonna go to the TEA website and,
I don't know why it's coming up, I have one of your students popping up on mine.
One of mine.
There we go.
Let's see. You click the pen instead of the people.
So she got that right. Oh, no, she didn't. She did, oh,
okay, and this was a multi-select, correct?
Mhm.
yes.
Multi-select.
Point value. These questions can be worth, this is from TEA. These questions can be worth a maximum of 2 points with the possibility of receiving 1 point for a partially correct
So they
response.
can get partial on STAR.
So they didn't get this partial.
They didn't.
Okay, then that is good feedback to give the district.
If you go through
Sarah, do you know where to
the
find that form?
assessment, like this.
Give feedback.
No.
I will share,
And
put it in the
then
agenda so
actually
we can
go
do that.
to,
Okay.
Let me do that. So, let's see.
right here. And then click search. When you go to
Oh,
right here,
there's
click the
the
pencil right there.
there's the
Yeah, click right there, and then you can actually click on the question type. So like what I'm seeing right now is,
I think a lot of them chose Yeah, cause I have a student who got one of the two correct and got 0 credit.
Let's look at here. I'll pull that up.
Same thing with this student. One of zero.
Yes, and it gives us an example. So
Right.
if a student gets the correct answer, they get 2 points, 2 of them, right? The student chooses 1 correct answer and 1 incorrect, they get 1 point. The student chooses 2 incorrect answers, they get 0 points. I'm also gonna link this, TEA and all the points on our agenda for today, so
Okay.
we have it for.
Oh, I wonder if that would push.
Okay, cause I'm seeing a lot of mine select this one.
The top one, What is the majority of your,
7? Cause all of my friends in the red are set.
well, do we know which ones are the correct
They're all
answers?
set. All of my
It
other
should be
students are.
5 and 2/10,
And then the one below.
and then below it 5 and 22/100.
So the
Yes.
majority of
So-
your students are choosing the first one?
Yeah, I had
5.
one student choose that one and then the 5 and 22.
I think it's understanding what the name of the decimal is. Because if they know to read this 5 and 22/100, they would know that wouldn't be it, but they're seeing it as the tenths place.
I think they got confused because if the 5.20, if it would have just been 5.2, they would have gotten 5 and 2/10. That's what I'm thinking.
I would agree.
Cause I saw a lot of
Okay,
kids
okay.
struggling with that.
I would
That's
agree.
that makes
Totally.
sense.
Yeah.
I would agree.
So
I
how
would
can we
think
help
they're
with
the
that?
2 that only have 22 and everybody has 20.
Because if they see
That
that,
could be another
Yeah.
testing strategy where like, oh, these two are.
Yeah, these 2
Yeah,
are not.
I think it
able
might
to-
be a testing strategy thing that we
Yeah.
can help them with.
so I feel like if they saw the 5.20, they would be like, oh, that's supposed to be 20 over 100. That's
Right,
not
I didn't
right.
see 20 over 100.
Mhm.
I did have someone choose the bottom one too, so that would make sense of.
I did
like,
too,
what-
because I saw
uh-huh.
choose
Yeah,
that one.
I did too.
Yeah.
So in this case, and I'm not a math person, so what can the student do to narrow it down? What tools can they use to narrow it down?
I mean, they should know for the second option that because there's a whole number next to it, that
That's
option doesn't have a whole number next to it.
Okay,
Right,
so that one they can,
should,
right.
that one's automatically a wrong answer.
right.
And they should understand that even if they have a 0 in the 100th place, if it's a 0 in the 100th place, that can translate into a 10th as well. That's
Right.
something that they should.
So
Okay.
something we probably need to focus on is how to teach them those elimination strategies, specifically with decimals to fractions. So like, what are ways you think we could do that?
I mean, even just this week in small group, I've been talking about how they always give you at least one answer that you can eliminate off the bat. So if you read a question, you don't know where to begin, eliminate at least one answer.
I would like to have them what I've been doing is going backwards. I have them not look at their answer options, but write out their answer options. So something like this, I would have them cover half and write the
What would it
fraction,
be?
or cover the other half and write the decimal. Because then they can get confused by that and see if what they think initially is right, if it matches, or if it doesn't match.
And something I also had them do is I had them practice like maybe reading and saying the decimal out loud. Because if they read 5 and 22/100, they would see that's not 5 and 22 over 100.
Okay, saying it
Yeah.
out loud.
Because if you
Okay,
say
that's
it-
all good.
I think those are great
That's
strategies.
a really good strategy.
We focused on if you can read it, you can write it, because it gives you, if you know that's 5 and 22/100, 22 over 100.
Right.
But it still, for some reason, doesn't click for some kids.
Yeah.
Even if they read it out loud, they can say, oh, that's 5 and 22/100. But then you're like, okay, so what are you gonna put in the denominator? And they're like, I don't know. They can't make that connection, which is interesting.
So how could we help them make that connection? What could be a way that we can help them build that almost reading? It sounds like another reading,
Well, I always said the math test is a reading test.
it is,
Too.
especially in 4th grade.
You have to be able to.
So it might even be just practicing some things in small group, like when you read it out loud, write what you're saying. So,
You could also do, well, you guys do excellent job doing the warm-ups, but putting one up and they have to either agree with or disagree with. Like, do I agree with that statement? 5:22, the first one equals.
That's a great idea.
Do I agree or disagree? And if I don't, and it's something very quick that you're already embedding in your warm-ups, and it doesn't have to be these, it could be any others,
Right.
where you're already having them and then talking to, okay, similar to what we just did right now, what are some ways that we can figure out if that's true or false?
I think that's a good
You know,
point
just,
to make,
ju-
because I feel like a lot of times we try to find what's true,
Yes.
but I think having strategies where we're also saying, well, why is it not correct? Kind of switches their thinking, because I feel like a lot of test questions we're seeing is they're having to think the other way about it. I think a warm-up would be a good idea to implement that.
like, why is that not the answer? Because
Right.
why is number, because it doesn't have the whole number, okay, like having them look at that and see that.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea.
I think that might be something that you can easily integrate into what you're doing.
And
Either
into the
small
flow of our
groups, into
routine.
your routine,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, let's also look at question, do we wanna do 12 or question 13? What do you think? Look at your data, do we wanna do 12 or 13?
She said 12, but I don't have 12 in my question, I have 13.
Okay,
I had 13.
I had 12 before 13, but we can do,
We should do 13 because we all three have.
we all have 13, so let's do that 13.
As a campus, I would agree 13 was our lowest
I-
out of those two.
Don't see the question. Oh,
Yeah.
Oh,
I
this
just see
is
the
fine.
answer option.
Okay,
Okay, there we go.
oh,
Oh, it was this one.
I remember
Yeah.
seeing this one. The
Mhm.
cards below each represent a decimal amount. If the cards are in order from least to greatest value, which two decimal amounts could belong in the empty space? So they not only had to figure out what those decimal amounts meant, but then put them in order, but then know what was in between. So it's like a triple layered question.
It's a multi-step, yeah.
That's multi-step with pictures. So what strategies would our students have to be able to do in order to solve this problem?
This is an interesting question because I haven't seen a question like this ever.
Hmm.
Even like in all of the IQ questions and lead forward, this is the first time I've seen a question like this.
Yes, when they integrate the pictorial
Mhm.
models and also order them,
It's like a picture word problem.
and could be long, and then you're trying to find also an unknown.
Right.
So I feel like it would make sense if if they already put it in order and said which one would go in the middle, but then having to rearrange it and then do that, it's a lot.
Because they're not even in order.
I feel like this question would drive Heather crazy.
Yes, because it's saying which was, that goes in the middle, so automatically they're gonna come down here and say what goes there, but you gotta
Right.
understand that they're not least to greatest.
No, they're
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of my kids understood the what.
So, what would be the first step? Label?
First step would be probably to label the actual decimal
Decimal
amounts.
amounts.
Mhm.
Like what are the amounts? And
Yeah.
then put them in
Least to greatest.
Least to
Yeah.
greatest.
I think-
Know that you're looking for two decimal that are gonna go in between.
Yep.
Because it's not, because it only shows one space,
I
so it's
know.
gonna be
Oh,
two decimals,
Oh
so
my
that's already
gosh.
throwing them off.
I-
Because maybe some of them only selected one.
Yep.
But the cards, are the cards that want least to greatest? They're not.
No,
No,
they're not.
That one.
So why, that doesn't make sense then.
It
It's
does.
the
If
If
keyword
the cards
if.
are in order,
If.
yeah, but that doesn't make sense.
No, it will be three-step problem.
It's a three-step problem.
But how are they to know that they're supposed to putting them in or supposed to put it in order?
Just
From
from,
the
looking
least
at it?
to greatest.
By
value.
the-
So this is honestly, this is a big reading one.
if the
If.
cards are in order, if
If
the
they
card is in
are.
order.
If.
See, but
Because they're
that's-
not, so if they were, what would be the missing
This
piece?
was
See,
the
these kind of
confidence
questions
star.
are the ones where the kids who can get it, they'll overthink it because of stupid stuff like this.
Yeah.
Instead of like testing like what they actually know, you're playing with them and making them overthink it.
See, but if you
So-
think about it though, this wasn't the most missed question, which is interesting. Reading it, you would think it would be more missed than it
Yeah.
was.
You do. So what would be like our top 3 steps that we would want the students to do to, to
Well,
help
label
them
the
in the
decimals.
future?
Yeah,
Label the decimals
got
and
it.
then order it.
Okay.
Order the decimals that you already have, and then cross-reference your decimals with the decimals that are on the list.
Cause I think if you label it, then you'll know, oh, they're not in
I
order.
wouldn't even pay attention to them being in order. I would just label it and then myself put what I have written out in order and not even look at that picture. The only reason why that picture is up there is to give you the decimal. Don't even look at it for ordering. You're looking at it to understand what the decimal value is,
Right.
and then you yourself look at the order and you know how to order them. That's misleading.
It's where the pictures are really helpful.
No, they're not.
It's not, like, adding those pictures like that is confusing.
This is a tough question. Like, this is a lot of layers,
Yeah.
along with visuals, and having to read each part, knowing that it's 2 decimals, but there's only 1 space.
Did you ever have to do in your instruction in your classroom where they had to find an amount in the middle? Or did you just work on ordering least to greatest, greatest to
Oh, what
least?
is- yeah, what did our STEM scopes
The
lesson
curriculum
do?
that we had
Yes,
was purely ordering. And if
just
we
strictly
look,
ordering.
if we look at,
What does the
the
standard
T.
say?
yeah, what number is
Let's see this.
This
This
is
is
12, so it's the 1 and 4
4.2.
It should be 4.1.
4.2F.
We're
Compare and
F.
order decimals using concrete and visual models to the hundredths. Compare and order decimals using concrete and visual models to the hundredths.
So this one is a visual model, but
But the curriculum and content that
We've
we've
never
taught,
had to
we
find-
never had to find a midpoint or a medium.
Okay, so let's write this down and also at feedback. So we said
that would be a good feedback to put in the
feedback for
curriculum
number
feedback.
13, and then we had feedback for number, let's go back.
I mean, it goes back to what we've been talking about for weeks of the rigor.
11.
Right.
Yeah, for
We're
the
seeing a lack of
Yeah,
rigor in our
there's a
curriculum.
lack of rigor.
Yeah.
So that's something that we should probably put in the feedback form just specifically
Oh,
for
it was
this
for
test.
7. It was for 7 because they
Oh, yeah,
didn't
that's
give us the correct amount of points.
Oh, yeah.
Cause then that would have pushed one of my
Right.
items too.
Yes, the point value in the question
Yeah,
number 7.
Right here.
Yes.
And then this one would be.
I linked the district's feedback form in the agenda for today,
Perfect.
in a highlighted in yellow. And then just FYI, right below that, I put the Math Star 2.0 redesign document that tells us, how many points questions are worth.
Okay.
Because you know what, that almost feels like a 5th grade question, cause they don't learn the meaning of median, range, and, what's the other one? Mode
Mode.
until 5th grade.
Huh.
And to understand that there's gonna be decimals in between there, that's a median, that's not in our content, like if we think about it.
So that's good feedback that the
Yeah.
district needs to know, because if we're not even teaching that content, then this is almost like a question that's almost spiraling them or preparing them for 5th grade without ever
Yeah,
having
cause I
taught it.
remember going in your classroom and they were ordering least to greatest, greatest to least,
Mhm.
finding the value
Mhm.
of the picture, the visuals.
But
But then
nothing like this.
we need to add, if this is what they're expected to do,
And that needs to be added
then that
to the
needs to be
T.
added where they need to.
Along with prime numbers too, because I had on the practice star, I had a lot of kids have questions on that. And we don't have prime number in our curriculum, that's not until 5th
Fifth
grade. So it feels like we're lacking a lot.
So that's 7 and 13 for
13.
feedback for the curriculum? Okay, let's write that down. Do we wanna look at one more before we start deciding how we wanna do this in our classrooms?
If we look at the district and ours, question 1.
Let's look at question
The
1.
district had 64,
Cause we wrote down question 1.
we had 58 and 56.
Okay. What T was question 1?
Question 1 was
I think it has several.
4.1B, 4.1F.
Okay, let's look at that question.
3E, yeah.
Cause that was in this question by lots. Okay. Stephen fed his dog some dog food out of 3 identical bags of dog food. The models are shaded to represent the part of each bag of dog food he used. What fraction represents the dog food fed to Stephen's dog? So let's break down what are they actually solving.
these
So,
up.
yes,
They're adding all of them.
you need to label the bags, right?
Right.
About how
They
how
have-
many of the box
So-
food was used.
Are shaded to represent the parking.
Because they're really gonna be making a mixed number. Or improper fraction.
Yeah,
It's an improper
yeah.
fraction.
So it's a one,
So they would have to know to take
4 out
each
of-
piece,
And
add them
then
together, and then it makes an improper
And
fraction.
you have to know that you need to keep the denominator at 8.
And this question also kind of makes, reaffirms why 11 was most missed, because here,
yes,
they're saying shaded represents the part of the dog food that was used.
Right?
And then where the other one, shaded represents the part of the dog food that, or the.
Yeah,
So
and
we
there's
see that
something-
twice.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's something that when you're talking about shaded, it's almost like using keywords, you know, people use like how many more, and you hear the word more and you think addition, but no, it's how many more students are than
And
here, so
subtraction.
the subtraction. Here's where you could emphasize, like you had said, Lily, the vocabulary, shaded, and be like, shaded can mean, you know, like in this example,
Well,
to represent how much is used,
Right,
or represent how much is not being used.
right. So in this case, it's another vocabulary term where we're saying that shaded isn't actually being represented how we have seen it before. So that's something we need to work on, is how we can help our students look at the vocabulary and decide what is it actually asking of our students. Because that is confusing.
Because I could say in the lower grades, we always shade what it says, you know?
Right.
2 slices out of 3, so you shade 2 out of 3, not how many slices were deep. 1/3 was it, you know? And so, because that's how naturally it's taught. But here they're having to go both directions.
Yeah.
It's like the water cycle. They
Right.
just remember it one way, and when it goes the other way, what happens? It's like they forget the water cycle.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like, but you know the steps. It's just, it just went the other way.
It's just in a different order now.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, well, we can talk through what are some, based on like what we looked in our notes, looking at the data, seeing the trends, what are you guys still noticing or reflecting on what this data is revealing to us?
I think
It's like, what is it telling us?
I think the kids have a problem when the test question is just slightly different from what we've done in class. Because even with conversions, of if it says one gallon's 4 cups, if it's flipped the other way, they're like, but it says 4 cups is 1 gallon, so that's different. And it's like, no, it's just flipped. They have problems, like problem solving. And being able, if it's written a little bit differently, they're like, I haven't seen this before, so I can't do it. But if you take what they learn, they can, and apply it, they'll be fine.
So it's almost like we're seeing that they're struggling with the order in which the processes are. So if they're out of order,
Yeah.
then they get stuck. Okay, what else?
I think just going back to your testing strategies, you know, how to break down, like you said, how do you break down this problem? How do I, and like Sarah, going back to what you said, how do I read it and then be able to say, or be able to know what the question is asking to do before I start breaking it down?
Okay.
I also wish that we were given problems that look like this.
Okay.
So that way we have the flexibility to go forwards, backwards, and apply that thinking more regularly in class. Because if if we're given the old type of questions, and that's what we're incorporating when we're doing our warm-ups, or incorporating that in small group, or even like the engaging math or the performing math, they're not really questions like this. I think the most similar to these forward-backwards questions would be performing math, and even at that, like the rigor isn't really there, because the way the questions are written, they're not as confusing as these have been.
Okay. So.
And that's gonna happen, just being honest with any content area, we don't know how that standard is going to be tested.
We don't know the
How
application piece of it.
The question is going to be created we just have that standard. But knowing to break down the standard into the various different parts and know that shaded can mean multiple different things. Order and compare, that could look various different ways.
I
But you're right,
Where
by
my
having,
frustration is coming from
It's
is
just-
that the teaks can be interpreted differently.
I
So
wonder if
right.
you looked
different
in the text
curriculum-
clarifier,
Yeah,
So
what that would say.
it sounds like it really is just that we need to, well, these are the things I noticed. The order of the problem, so actually looking at, do they know the problem in order one way, but more than one way? And using our testing strategies, so actually helping the students identify, okay, what are those keywords? What do those keywords mean? And then how do they look at the reading portion to relate it to math?
I don't know if I
And
would say keywords, I would say like important information.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the words are
keywords, they're gonna
different.
get fixated on those words, because that's something that they've learned from kindergarten up until, you
you
know, whenever.
memorize words.
Yeah.
Right. And we don't want that.
It's just, yeah, do you comprehend what it's
So
asking you to do?
So not keywords, but comprehension of the vocabulary.
Yeah.
The academic, terminology, like what.
Terminology. Let me write these down and then, where's that, do we have a whiteboard marker? Okay.
Yeah.
So we have, I don't know if you can see on that side, I can also write on here. Let's do that. I know you can see this. We have order in which a problem is solved, so really looking at the order. If they can go forwards and backwards. And then we have, the terminology, sorry. And then I think the last one was the actual, terminology, and then was there anything else that we're noticing from these problems that we looked at?
Being able to understand what the problem
Forwards,
is.
backwards thinking.
That.
Was that order? Okay.
Yeah, orders and forwards,
Mine,
backwards
being
thinking,
able to break down the problem.
Yeah.
breakdown problem.
Yeah.
And being able to use what you know to be able to break down a problem to get to what the problem is asking. And this is
Yeah.
where, like in small group, and I know you're all math teachers and we wanna get to the answer, but you could have problems where you don't wanna get to the answer.
Right.
My goal today is for you to be able to tell me what is the problem asking you to do and how will you solve it. And maybe just come up with an expression, numerical expression, a sentence about how you will solve it. But I really don't wanna get to the answer. Kids are quick to get to the answer. I just wanna know, and it could be questions with really no, take off the numbers. Where I just wanna see if you can break down this problem and see what it's asking us to do. It wants us to add, then multiply, and then subtract.
Right.
It wants, it's like Sarah, you're saying, like, categorize it. This is a geometry question, it's asking about shapes, quadrilaterals, and it wants to know this. Like if they were able to say it back, kind of like when we're doing reading, you
Yeah,
read
no, that's
something,
a
tell me
great
the main
strategy.
idea, but I don't want to get to the solve, because mathematically, we can see that the kids can do the math.
Right, it's really just understanding how the question is worded. So we need to come up, or let's kind of start brainstorming and deciding, how can we start doing these things in our classroom? So what are ways that we can help them order, look at the difference forwards and backwards? How can we implement terminology or break down the problems? Like what are some things that practically we can leave here and start doing?
Solving and then reverse solving, asking them to do the opposite is something that I do often. Like,
When do you do it? What part of your lesson?
in my small group,
Okay.
like, cause I don't do whole group lesson often, I'll do whole group lesson like maybe once a week if I'm introducing a new content, but I mostly work in small group and then everyone else is doing independent group.
Right.
And so while we're in small group on the floor, we're going over these questions and then we'll flip it and reverse it. So like today in my small group, we were adding and subtracting mixed measurements.
Okay.
like, I don't know, one of the questions was like 12 feet and 8 inches, and then 4 feet and 2 inches, adding it. And then instead of just adding it, because that's what the question wanted them to do, was just come up with the mixed number. Then on top of that, having them convert it, even though the question's not asking them to convert it, but just so that they can practice their converting.
That's a great strategy. And I think an easy way to implement it into our routine would be to even take our warm-ups and not just look at the correct answers, but say, why are the other answer choices incorrect? And maybe have students come up and talk about it and say, well, this is incorrect because if you do it this way, da 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 da. Because then they're able to explain the thinking behind why was it incorrect.
Or that's incorrect, but what will make it correct?
Right. And prove that's a good idea.
Like the one without the whole number, Abigail, the one that you pointed out, say, okay, we know it's incorrect, so what number is it missing? What will make it true?
Yep.
Kind of like, Sarah, what you're doing, where you're flipping it, and now
I
you
think
know it's
taking
incorrect, what will make it correct?
Right.
If this number was different, if the bottom number had an extra 0, that will make it true.
Yeah, especially for those decimals to fractions, I think would be a good visual. We can even start putting those in some of our warm-ups moving forward, of seeing that. How could we make it correct while it is incorrect? So that way they're saying, oh, and that can help them with elimination too. I think if we start using that in our warm-ups, because then they'll be able to use that test strategy. Oh, I know this is incorrect, but I know how it could be correct, and then we can find those correct answer choices.
I have a question. So that's a good idea to do in your warm-up. When you are working in small group, do you ever get to the point where it's not just getting to one answer, but they're looking at multiple options that could be the answer and they're eliminating? Or the STEM Scopes doesn't do that? The STEM Scopes just trying to find one answer and then you keep going? You know what I mean? Like do you ever get to like, there's 2 possible answers and now they have to like.
That's like a differentiated, that's like a decide and defend.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Or
like a, in more advanced.
Or like a star-based assessment. The star-based assessment or multiple choice, but other than that.
I think the star-based assessment really lacks the rigor though too.
It does.
Like it's very obvious.
It is
this was not
very
the
obvious.
answer. Okay.
Yeah.
Where you don't have to have 4 options, but say the answer could be this or this.
Which one is it?
Which one is it? Oh, you got to this side. Okay, how did you do that?
Right.
Or you think it's this one, or here's the answer. Does this question get you to that answer? Or you're not even looking at the answer question first, you're looking at the answer choice.
Right.
And like having them go, no.
Yeah, I think giving them more opportunities to actually decide why it's incorrect, so that way they can figure out why it is correct. I think that will help. I think that will help with order and honestly breaking down the problem, because then they're actually looking at each piece and deciding why is it correct or why is it incorrect. But let's focus on, because we did have a lot of reading strategies
Well, they're telling me
that they're struggling with. So
they're telling me that the words overwhelm them.
okay.
It's
So
just
that's
like
why the
too many
breakdown
words?
is, when they see those problems,
Okay.
they just don't, it's overwhelming.
Does this test have the option where they can like, kind of like the star one, where they can highlight words? Or like, what strategies could we have them do? Because I know they can't do anything really on the screen, but maybe something on their paper.
Well, that's why I do, my strategy with mine is they find their main idea, and it can't be more than 2 words,
Okay.
2 to 3 words at most. So they understand what the problem is about, or they have an idea of what this problem is based on.
Okay.
Then they identify the question and write that question.
Okay.
And then from there, they go back to the first sentence. They read that first sentence, and if there's nothing important there, they go to the second sentence. And then the second sentence has important information, they'll write down the important information, but with less words.
So what important information are you having them pull out?
So like, for instance, like if I pull up a Zern question that we worked on yesterday.
Like, are you asking them to find the operation that they're using?
Nope, we don't
Okay.
even do that, not
Okay.
yet. Cause I want them to really understand.
Like names? Like names of people that are being mentioned, you know, like
Yeah, so that's the main
Julie
idea.
and Peter,
That would
okay,
be the main
these two people.
Okay.
So for instance, this is a question we did yesterday for
Okay.
tutoring. Beth is allowed 2 hours of TV time each week. Her sister is allowed 2 times as much. How many minutes of TV can Beth's sister watch? So basically, the first they did was Beth's TV, underline it.
Okay, so now Beth with the TV.
It's about Beth and TV.
It's like if
Question.
you were to draw a picture.
Right, you're just pulling out those
Yeah.
words
Mhm.
instead, yeah.
How many minutes of TV can Beth's sister watch? How many minutes of TV can Beth's sister watch?
Okay.
Then a bullet or a star or whatever they want. You read that first question. Beth is allowed 2 hours of TV time each week. So then that first bullet, Beth equals 2 hours week.
Okay.
Next sentence, her sister is allowed 2 times as much. Bullet, sister equals 2 times Beth.
So you have them for each sentence of the problem have a bullet point that they create.
Not necessarily, not for every sentence,
Okay.
only for the important information. Like if there are questions in there that have like filler, like, 4th grade Canton Elementary students, we're going to the grocery store. The
That was
grocery
part of
store
it.
is 2 miles from the school.
That's it.
How many yards with that? So that first sentence, that's a filler
They don't
sentence.
Right.
need it.
They don't need it, it's overwhelming, it's too many words. The second sentence, break it down.
Actually what they need.
Cannon, 2 miles, store.
So how do you get your students to pull out those keywords? Like, do you tell them to look for the numbers?
Mm-mm.
Or do you just have, because you said that the words were a lot for them.
Mhm.
So
They
then
need
how are
to-
you helping them condense that?
So they need to be able to read that sentence and identify what is the most important part of the sentence. Why is this sentence in this question? And for this part, her sister's allowed 2 times as much TV. Well, if I'm trying to figure out how much time Beth's sister is able to watch, I need to know that Beth's sister is able to watch 2 times as much. So 2 times, sister equals 2 times.
Okay.
So sister is in the question.
Yeah.
So
One
she's-
thing I think that would help us is on Tuesday, just a reminder, Emily Powell, our director of math, is coming with Samantha. She's one of our coaches, and they're gonna talk to you all through closed reading, something that Sarah has attended before. 2 years ago, I think, Sarah? Yeah,
Okay.
And it goes in line with what she's doing, but I think it will help with what information the
Right.
students pull out,
Right.
you know, cause
Because I know I have some friends that would probably look at it and just start pulling words.
Mhm.
they think all of it's important.
Right, they think all of it's
Yeah.
important.
Yep.
So I was trying to
Like, they
understand,
need to,
like, how do
understand
they
the
know
question.
it's important?
Yes.
They know it's important because they understand what the question is.
Well, she's coming and she actually has like a little, like a one pager where you ask students questions at that step, cause what closed reading is that you're looking at the same problem through various different lenses.
Kind of
You
like
know,
in reading.
yeah,
look
like
at the
reading. You
same
look-
passage,
Yeah,
same
and so you look at it once,
Okay.
then you look at it again, and then each time you're pulling something different, so those students who are getting tired, because there's so many words, by the time you've looked at it 3 times, or however many times they need to, depending on the length of the problem, then they have a really good understanding of what the question is asking. But it does it in a way, closed reading is meant to be like a tool to help you with the stamina that you need to break down that problem.
Okay, so maybe we
So-
should wait till we have that closed reading
Yeah.
training, and then maybe we can reconvene for the terminology we wanna use. And if we have a one pager, and that's something that we can reference with those questions, to
then
probably
at-
our small
Yeah,
groups
and
would
then
be
at
a good
each
time to use
step,
that.
you're saying those questions over and over and
Right.
over again, and by the time they do it independently, they have a reference, like to reference to, like background.
Yeah.
They're gonna break down the problem.
Anything else? I think we're off to a good start, like.
We are, and we have good feedback for the
Place.
district, if anybody wants to take lead on sending that over, that would be great, cause our district is very open to feedback and making changes, so.
Yeah, and I think giving them that feedback and then focusing in our small groups when we get that terminology, I think that will really help for that guided reading or closed reading. And then those warm-ups, I think will really help
Yeah.
implement those
That's
things.
a good plan.
Thank you, guys.
No, thank you. This is really good. Now it makes me wanna sit with the lower grades on fractions.
I know.
I need to see when their fraction unit is coming up, so we can talk about that.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's the alignment piece that we're trying to do our